Absolutely, and Tory has become such an integral part in the hip hop community right now today, and for like he puts these videos on Instagram saying like, "Yo, they're not feeling me." You know what I mean? Where does like saying basically saying people aren't really feeling his hunger for wanting to be the best? Where does that come from for him? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, again, as I've told you, for me, I've taught people to define success not in terms of what somebody else is doing, but to define success based on your own potential.
Right.
These guys have grown up hearing this for all their life, basically. I mean, there's been a few interviews that he has done in which he has talked about my particular input into his life, and the truth about it is that they have grown up around me, not just talking to them, but talking to other people. I have always believed that, whether it is my biological children or spiritual children, meaning those who I mentor that,
Right.
are not necessarily part of the Peterson family, I believe that a real father has a dream of their children outdoing them. Anybody who says that they are speaking into somebody's life or mentoring somebody and they just want to become sort of like a bottleneck where they create this thing where you're not supposed to pass them, that's not true fatherhood. A real father wants to know that by the time their child hits 22, 25, you would love to know that your child has gone so far beyond anything you've ever accomplished that it makes it look like you were just getting started.
And I wanted to ask you, during that whole tension between Drake and Tory, we know there was never an issue, but when all that was bubbling up to its peak, was there ever a phone call conversation that you reached out to your son and told him, don't even worry about what people are saying?
All the time, man. We always spoke through all of those situations, and there are times when he himself became so frustrated with the whole thing because Drake is a heavyweight in the industry before he even really got noticed. And so, having to contend with that was, at some point, was a tough thing. But the thing about it is, I know my kids, and I know that they will not back down from a fight. I've never taught them to fight in that sense, to fight with people. But I know them. I know they will not back down from a fight. So many times, my thing was to tell him, just let God handle this. Don't go after it. Don't put it out there because, you feel somebody calls you out like that, especially when it comes to hip hop.
Right.
The culture of hip hop makes you look like a punk if you don't respond. And so, in the midst of all of that, me telling him many times, don't go after these things. Don't deal with it this way or that way. And the thing about it is, if you go back and check some of his radio interviews when they would bring up the issue of Drake, he would actually do exactly what I was telling him to do, which is, there's a proverb that says, it is in peace that you judge and make war. You can't be strategic when you are so wired up and being all contentious and so on. And interestingly enough, I'm going to give you some insight from a spiritual perspective. Just this past year, when they were doing the Coachella event over in Cali, there was a situation that happened, an incident that broke out that could have really escalated things to a whole other level. And I know that Tory was, he was at that point, he was feeling like he'd had enough.
Can you elaborate on what happened?
I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. The fact is, let me bring a biblical narrative just to show you a principle, and then share with you what actually happened. In the Bible, there is a situation where Abraham and his nephew Lot go to this place that God had revealed as the promised land. When they got there, after a while, both of these guys, their flocks, their herds began to be so big that the pasture that they were grazing in became a contentious issue. So then all of a sudden now, the scriptures actually says in Genesis, the herdsmen of Abraham and the herdsmen of Lot began to fight with each other over this. And Abraham, in the wisdom of God, calls his nephew Lot and said, listen, the whole land is in front of us. Just if you choose to go to the east, I will go to the west. If you choose to go to the west, I'll go to the east. And he gave him the pick of the land, so to speak. Lot decided when he looked up, he said the plains of Mamre around Sodom and Gomorrah look so lush and green. He said, okay, I'll go over there. Abraham said, okay, you do that. So basically the same situation was happening here. A lot of this stuff is pushed on the internet. A lot of this stuff is pushed by fans rather than by the two people themselves that is supposed to be having beef, quote unquote. And that's what I saw was really happening. And so I'd advise him from that standpoint. So when this incident happened, and Drake was not even present, and what actually had taken place was that two of Drake's security people followed him to a particular bathroom and tried to start something with him. Thank God the whole thing was squashed. Wow. There was a guy with a camera actually trying to record something, again, for the sake of sensationalism and stupidity. But it never really went down the way they had hoped. And I'm all the way over in Kenya, and I'm having a dream that I'm standing in a building with these two guys, with Drake and Tory, and I'm just between them and brokering a peace, like a reconciliation. By that time, Tory had gotten so upset, he had resisted for a long time actually making a diss track because he felt that people were beginning to think that, you know, he wasn't holding his own, or he wouldn't really stand up. Many times people are saying, you know, he's saying stuff, but he's either saying it subliminally or he's trying to act like he's not really. No, all those times I was really advising him, that's not the way to go. And trust me, that's the hardest thing to resist. It's not easy when you feel like you're being punked. And bottom line is that it was just about 2 weeks after that I had this dream. I wasn't present, but Drake's people called him up, and they decided to come together, and they met. And in just one quick conversation, that whole thing was squashed. And now, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the city of Toronto is better for it. The hip-hop community is better for it. The fans on both sides are better for it. And, of course, that culminated in Drake bringing him up on stage at OVO Fest in Toronto this past summer. So, you know, there's always, man, something out there trying to tell you why you should be sidetracked into things that really don't benefit, really don't profit. But that's where wisdom comes into play, you know?
Being a fan of both of them, right? Like, I'm a huge fan of Drake and I'm a huge fan of Tory. Being a fan of both of them, and they both create fantastic music. And so as a fan just of music, right, it sucked not seeing them two link up to do music together when they were beefing and everything like that. You know what I mean? It's hard. They should really make music together. Do you think that they will have some type of a track out soon or anything like that?
I believe that's going to be in the works. Just based on talking to him, I believe that that's to come in the future. So that one I will look forward to.